Good morning, everybody hear me? And of course those people who can't hear me won't say anything, so we'll go with it. So my name's Dave Hollings, I'm chair of the Dog Inn at Belthorn, which is a Lancashire moorland village about 4 miles south of Blackburn. You're all welcome. So the Dog Inn has been a pub on that site for 300 years. Not sure if it's the same building, certainly some bits aren't the same. But on the 9th of November 2014, Enterprise Inns kindly closed our pub for us, and it was bought by a local developer who wanted to knock it down and replace it with housing. It was the last place in the village. We'd lost the shop, we'd lost the church, we'd lost everything. The pub was the last thing apart from the primary school, the only community place there was. So anyway, so we contacted the developer, we met with him as luckily a small-ish local developer, and we persuaded him to give us a chance to raise the money to buy the pub, which we did. So that was straightforward. Come on to that in a minute. So the pub came into community ownership on the 1st of September 2015. We did extensive refurbishment and redesign, and the community reopened the pub on the 14th of November 2015, and we're still here. So what do we do? There was a nice picture. Just imagine there was a nice picture in between slides. So what do we do? We've got a refurbished bar area. We kept a bit of the traditional design, but we made it more light, more airy, more modern, because after all we are a pub. But we are also a small essential shop and the village coffee shop. So in the daytime you've got far more people coming into the coffee shop than into the bar side. With no village hall, so community room, we created community rooms upstairs. The church closed in the village over 40 years ago, so on the third Sunday of the month we're the village church. We've refurbished the restaurant, which it took us a little while to do that, about a year, and we realised how hard it was running the pub, the shop and the coffee shop, so we let the restaurant out to a separate local operator, two local lads who want to have their first go at running a restaurant. They do it very well indeed. We redeveloped some of the spare land out the back into community gardens, and we have some of the things you'd expect in a pub: Christmas parties, Easter egg hunts, that's coming up soon, Halloween parties, England football matches, apologies, and royal weddings. I've put those two down deliberately because there's a story there. When we were doing the community consultation back in 2015 about what we should have in the pub, one thing that was made very clear to us by the community was we were not going to have one of those big screen TVs in the pub. That was not the sort of pub the Dog Inn was going to be. And then in spring 2018 we started to get lobbies from two directions, because on the horizon were the World Cup and the royal wedding. And a large chunk of the village wanted to watch the royal wedding in the pub, and a large chunk of the village wanted to watch the England football games in the village, in the pub. So we were persuaded to put up a large screen television, although originally people said no, not under any circumstances, and it's now become a permanent fixture. But that's a benefit of community ownership. You know, this decision didn't have to go to head office in Basingstoke. We were, people were talking to us. We picked it up as a committee. We consulted with people, asked, "Do you want this?" And the vast majority of people said, "Yeah," because of these two things happening. And we changed. And we don't have to ask anybody's permission. We have live music once or twice a month and celebration parties. There's nowhere else in the village, so we have, as somebody once called them, hatches, matches and dispatches. So we have christenings, weddings, birthday parties, wakes. And we're even the village health service, because we have the defibrillator on the outside wall. So everything has been brought together under one roof, except the gardens, which obviously are not under a roof. So where do we get the money from? This is a few years back, so even if we were in England, this would be different. But just to give you a flavour. So we had an initial bursary of 2,000 from Plunkett Foundation, which was really useful because you've got all those initial costs, like we needed to have a valuation done, we needed to instruct a solicitor, so that meant we had the money to pay for those things without asking the community to raise those monies to spend that might just have been purely speculative. We raised 180,000 of community shares in the end. We didn't actually have that many on the day we needed to complete, but we had a 50k share underwriting from Cooperative and Community Finance, a national cooperative funding organisation, and that meant we knew we had 180k if we needed it, so that got us over the line. We got 10,000 small grant from Awards for All, which is part of the National Lottery, 10,000 from Lloyd's Trust, which is just a local trust in the nearest town. After we'd set up, we got 30,000 from Lancashire Environment Fund. It's easier to get grants once you're set up, which is a bit tricky because you need to set up first to get them. And we got small grants for equipment from the pub as a hub. So although the great bulk of the finance came from that share issue, those bits and pieces of grant money were really important. You know, 180k enabled us to buy the building and do some of the refurbishment, but it wasn't really enough. So getting 10k from here, 10k from there was the difference between opening something that was a bit shabby and opening something that was right. So, you know, you can focus very much on the big chunks of money, and obviously you need those to do the heavy lifting, but sometimes it can be just those little bits that make a big difference. My picture's appeared. Don't know how that happened. Very good. So that's what, if you come to the Dog Inn, on the wall just by the entrance, that's what you'll see. The Dog Inn, this country pub, is at the heart of our friendly village, and in September 2015 it was purchased by the community for the benefit of the community. A warm welcome to all. And that's the dog. That was done. A lady in the village works in marketing, and she did some designs for dogs' heads, and that's a design she came up with. He's called Patrick, and there's a reason he's called Patrick. Patrick was the dog's head, literally, that was on the wall above the fireplace in the old pub from time immemorial. You know, the oldest person in the village couldn't remember when it appeared, so it'd been there since then. When we acquired the pub and we went into the cellar, we found all the rubbish in the cellar piled up that had just been left there, and on top of the pile of rubbish was Patrick. So we took him, spruced him up and put him back because he's our symbol. We feel like we were, as a community, were thrown on a scrap heap and left, you know, without our pub, without anywhere for the community to live. We didn't accept it, and Patrick's a symbol of that. So what have we achieved? Obviously bought and refurbished the Dog Inn. We've been trading now coming up for 4.5 years. First 2 years were difficult. We were learning a lot. We broke even over the first 2 years basically. But we made a profit in the third and fourth years, and we've been able to pay 3% on our members' shares for the last 2 years, which has been very welcome. And as most of them are villagers, they've come and spent it in the pub, so even better. We've got over 120 members, 250 houses in the village, so we're getting approaching one house in every two co-owners of the pub, and we have about 40 volunteers, some of whom do a lot and some of whom do a little. But everybody who does a little, that means one less job I've got to do. So I'm very grateful. We refurbished the bar and restaurant, and we were able to do that much cheaper than there was a pub owned by a pub co about a mile away from us, which is maybe 2 miles, which has been refurbished recently, and the amount it cost them was eye-watering. We were able to do it cheaply because we used people from the village. Some of it was just general, so people turn up to paint the place with and anybody can wield a paintbrush. But also we had a plumber who lived in the village. We had builders who lived in the village. And they had mates who were like electricians. We had a lady who did upholstery in her spare time, and basically they did a lot of the work for free or mates' rates, or were able to get materials for trade. It took us longer, but it saved us a fortune. We converted the living accommodation upstairs into community rooms, made the community gardens and event space at the back. We had new ladies and gents toilets. Ladies toilets before we opened, gents toilets last year. Anybody who doesn't understand that, blokes just don't bother. Nobody was really complaining about the blokes' toilets, so we left them for 4 years. And we also put outside decking and a terrace out the back. We've got the finest views in Lancashire. But we can see Blackpool Tower on a clear day, which is nearly 40 miles away. And yet Enterprise Inns had this pub with these windows that I stand on tippy toes to see out of. So we put in long sash windows, and 2 years ago we put in an outside terrace that people can sit out in the Belthorn sun, not in the winter. Belthorn is one of the few places in the world that has horizontal rain. But you know, it's very popular in the summer. People sit out there, and that's great. In terms of the social impact, we're everything basically. We're the pub, the coffee shop, an essential shop, music venue, church, and so much more. We're the heart of the village. When we reopened in November 2015, there were people who said, we're saying to people, I haven't seen you for a year, because the pub had been closed for a year, and there's nowhere else to meet in the village. And our village is a long linear village. It goes down a hill for about a mile. So, you know, there was nowhere to meet. And we reduce social isolation just by being open 7 days a week. We're the only place that is open apart from the school. So, and the school isn't that keen on you going in unless you've actually got kids there. You know. I said earlier, we host all kinds of things. We have the Easter egg hunt coming up. We'll have the May Day parade came back. Whilst the pub was shut, that stopped. Village bonfire. We don't have the bonfire so much now. We still have the firework display out the back, and that's great. Christmas parties. We provide meeting space for local groups, and we provide that free. However, we're a pub and a coffee shop. So upstairs you have the meeting rooms, and then you come down the stairs, and on your left is the bar and on your right is the coffee shop. And you've been upstairs for an hour and a half. What are you going to do? So we don't need to charge people. Last year, the school netball team, kit was getting a bit threadbare, so they came to us and said, well, can you help buy pay for the new kit? And we said, well, how much is it? And they went, whatever it was. And we said, well, we can afford that. So they didn't have to do any funding applications, they just had to talk to us. You know, it's our community, why not? We ran 4 charity events in 2019, and we just had a charity event 2 weeks ago, which are very successful, so we host those. And we employ 16 local people from in and around the village. We have 25 employees overall, but 16 of them are local, mainly are young people. And there's nowhere else for young people to work in the village. And we have around 220 households, and of those, you know, from those we employ 16 people. Mostly part-time, obviously. And I start to leave you with, our biggest selling item through the coffee shop is sweets. It's the kids of the village, they come. My kids say to me, Dad, can you go to the pub? And as a loving parent, what can I do? But that's it, we serve the whole community. So we have sweets, we have ice creams. On the last day of the school term last summer, it was a boiling hot day, and you literally had the kids from the primary school queuing out the door of the pub. But that's great because we actually make a better margin on sweets and ice creams than we do on beer. I'm around for the day, happy to answer any questions. I've also, if anybody wants to note it down, are the slides going to be circulated, James? Okay. Yeah. You know, have a look at us. That's our website. That's my phone number. That's my email address. So if any of you are interested in developing your own community-owned pubs or any groups that you come across who are interested, please feel free to give them my contact details. Always happy to share because people shared with us. Thanks very much.